Welcome to another episode of the Make Mental Health Matter show. I am Kelli Melissa Reinhart, your host, and I I know I say it every single time, but I am very excited for my guests for today and the conversation that we are going to have because there are several things in life and it's this journey that we go on, and sometimes we have challenges throughout life, which lead us into a path that maybe we didn't think we were going to follow, or maybe it leads us into a mental health challenge or a substance use challenge, or there's so many different vices, I guess you could say, that come up. And those journeys lead us into the next place, which for all the guests that I have had, including my guest for today, is an even more incredible journey, and maybe not the exact path that my guests thought they would follow, nor myself, as with this show and everything that I do with my nonprofit. But the part is we take our experiences, we take our lived experience and translate that into whatever that new journey is. And I know I talk in a lot of circles at the very beginning because I never want to give away all of the things we're talking about. So without further ado, let me introduce, or without adding even more, my guest for today. Vanessa proudly identifies as being a transgender female who is extremely active in her long-term sustained recovery. Vanessa is the director of community connections for Advocates for Recovery Colorado and is on the board of directors for community connections for advocates. Wait, nope, let me go back. Is on the board of directors for Colorado Artists in Recovery. Vanessa is a passionate advocate for both recovery and LGBTQ plus communities, a public figure and speaker, a performer, and a person committed to maintaining a consistent state of positive change for herself and her community. So without further ado, Vanessa, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I know that was a lot of information, a lot of words. You did fantastic. I would have stumbled through every bit of that.
Well, I moved my screen as I was talking and I was like, that was a bad idea.
I'm excited to be here. I love this so much.
Yes, I'm so excited too. And I know we were kind of chatting before we went live that you and I had met last year at Pride, and I was fortunate enough. You asked us to come and be a part of the Advocates for Recovery rally too. But I would love for you to share with the audience just a little bit more about you and your story, because I gave them just a tiny little blip.
A tiny little blip. And honestly, for me, my story, the way I look at it, my story is this big, beautiful, it's beautiful to me, big, beautiful canvas. And, the canvas it's got all different types of colors and designs and holes in it because I don't remember a lot of my story. So for me to tell my story, I honestly, I can't tell it fully. And that canvas to me is beautiful because it took me a long time to realize that through all the ups, the downs, the dark spots, the circles, all of that make up the person that I am. And I absolutely love it. So I can give you a little glimpse, maybe like a little brush stroke of who I am, one of those little brush strokes on the canvas there. But my name is Vanessa. I am a transgender female. And as the beautiful greeting, the introduction to myself, I am super active in my sustained long-term recovery. And what that means for me is that I don't just sit around and expect my mental health to get better, that my struggles with recovery from all kinds of things, from trauma, mental health, substance, debt, overeating, all of that. I have to be super active in my community. I have to be super active to be a better individual, a better Vanessa, if that's possible. So I am super, super happy and proud to go out and be an advocate, to be a voice. But I have to be active in my community in all facets. So that allows me, my recovery allows me to be the director of community connections for the nonprofit Advocates for Recovery Colorado. We're statewide here in the state of Colorado. We're all over the place. All of our services are free. We're grant funded. And all we want to do is provide a community, and a community for everyone, because I firmly believe that every individual is in recovery from something. You know, that list that I gave a minute ago, where health. It could be because of a loved one's mental health struggles or substance struggles or financial issues, all kinds of things. But we are all in recovery from something. And that's how we can kind of mesh together. So we try to provide, resources in a safe place for everybody, no matter how they identified it. And I'm also blessed because my recovery allows me to be on the board of directors for Colorado Artists in Recovery. My past life, I was a musician. Did a lot of touring, made it on a few labels, thought that I was, going somewhere in my life as this identity that I had created. And for me, mental health struggles, I've had my whole life. And that's what led to the substance, because I was trying to hide it and try to mask it. And then I have addictive tendencies. So like I overeat donuts, I eat too much. Anything that makes me happy, I dive in 100%. And so I did that with substances to mask, honestly, all the childhood trauma that I had and the fact that Vanessa had been hiding inside for 48 years. And so a lot of trauma around that. So substances just kind of came second nature. And when I started my journey to be a better person, I focused mainly on the substances, but then realized that had an underlying effect of what was going on up here and in here my whole life. So then I switched everything and started working tandem, coincide, working on everything. So I'm blessed to be able to do what I do for a living. I'm blessed to be able to meet beautiful people like yourself. I get to connect in the community and just help break that stigma that's attached to the word recovery, because it doesn't mean substances only. It doesn't mean mental health only. It means a whole wide world of things. And once we can realize that and come together and realize that we're all in recovery from something, we all have struggles and successes and failures, and we're all together in this, then that's when the world becomes a more beautiful place.
I love that. And thank you for giving us that brush stroke. I love that. So I've had a few guests on the show that are also in the recovery community, and I love what you said. Also, that we're all in recovery from something. I think that's part of the human experience, and how we go throughout this journey that we call life is learning and changing and pivoting, and sometimes people mask what's going on with substances. And I think the cool part is that you have really shifted into this community of recovery, and knowing that it's still a journey. It's a daily journey. You have to be a part of community to for yourself and for staying sober, what all that means to you, right? And I think that that is one of the biggest things that I have really learned recently, is that community and connection are the biggest things that help people. So I love that you're a part of the Advocates for Recovery and then the Colorado Artists in Recovery, two very cool communities. But I'm wondering, and so what I love to do on this show is talk about some of those hard things, and I always offer you don't have to respond, and or you can kind of shift the conversation. But I'm curious because with and when we talk about substances, oftentimes what we have found is that it is from a place of a traumatic experience, or something in childhood that maybe wasn't resolved. So I'm just wondering if you would be willing to talk a little bit about that.
I would love to. I'm an open book. I talk about it all the time. So I'm blessed to have this platform to be able to talk about it. So again, it took me many, many years in order for me to dive into it, to be willing to dive into it, because I wasn't willing to dive into it. I just knew that I didn't fit in, I didn't belong, and I didn't know why. So for me, again, it started with my recovery journey. I started my recovery journey, and I can give you a little glimpse of that. My recovery journey started in the Department of Corrections. So my active addiction and the mental health trauma that I was not dealing with, and all the substance use that I had abused for many, many years. It led me to the Department of Corrections. I received a 10-year sentence, and I did 4 on that 10 years. And that's where my recovery journey began. It didn't start right away because I'll have to be honest, there's not a lot of resources inside for bettering yourself, but there's a lot of resources inside for using and abusing and masking that. So my recovery journey didn't start right away, but it did blossom and bloom in there. And that's when I learned about myself and I started to dive deep. What really helped me was meditation, yoga, and it allowed me to be comfortable with the person that I am because I never liked the person that I was. And that's when I started diving deeper into the past. And to be honest with you, I feel like I've had trauma since I was a child, since I was an adolescent. And to give you a little brief story, so I'm half Native American. I'm on the Cherokee Nation rolls. My father and everyone on his side of the family were all full blood. They spoke the language. They actually lived on the reservation. I was the firstborn that was not full blood. And to a woman who looked nothing like the rest of the family and lived outside of the reservation in a little bitty town in Oklahoma. So that's where my journey began, was in Oklahoma. And every time I would go visit the dad side of the family, I wasn't welcome. I didn't look like them. I was known around the community as not being one of them. And so I didn't get to fit in. I didn't get to go to drum circles. I didn't get to participate in things. I got to sit on the couch in my grandfather's house while they spoke a language I couldn't understand. And so that's where the trauma started fitting in because I wanted to be loved. And my mother was in her active addiction. So she bounced around a lot, which made me bounce around from family member to family member, whoever was available at the time. And it didn't necessarily have to be in Oklahoma. I kind of bounced all over the place. So, not having stability started at a very early age. That's why I think with change, I love change. I thrive off of change now. Some people don't, but I do. I think it started then because, I would only have brief little moments with my biological mother, and then I'd be handed off to someone else. But every time I was handed off to my father's side of the family, I wasn't welcomed and I wasn't allowed to be seen for the most part. So that's where the trauma really started. And then when I would go live with mother or other family members, I didn't look like them either. I was a chubby little Native American kid with glasses running around, just wanted to be accepted. And we grew up in poverty. We didn't have a lot of fun. So, I didn't have the cool clothes. I wasn't wearing the cool shoes and stuff. Didn't look like them. And we were right outside of the reservation. So they knew about the Native American population and they didn't really like each other. So my trauma started at a very early age with abandonment issues from the mother, from not feeling loved or connected with either side of the family, especially being tossed around from location to location, not really being able to finish school years because I would jump around from location to location. And that continued my whole life until I reached high school. And the longest I ever lived in one place, the longest I ever lived in one spot without bouncing around that I consider home was Branson, Missouri. And I lived there for 3 years. 3 years was the longest I ever lived in one location as a child. So my trauma, my mental health struggles started there.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And that I think that brings up a lot of understanding, especially like being, one, not accepted in one family, but then also really like bouncing around all over. And I think of like the children who also military based, or they are just like you said, having parents who also have their own substance use challenge, and they're just kind of lost in whatever's going on, and knowing that there was only one time really that you were there for an extended period of time. And hopefully once you, and I would assume that once you got older, then you were able to make those choices and be able to be where you wanted to be, which ultimately probably brought you into Colorado, which is wonderful.
Yes. And gosh, even though there were hardships, I love it. And I love it here so much. I'm never going to leave. You can't get rid of Vanessa. I'm going to be here forever.
Well, I'm glad that you're in Colorado. Then we were able to meet. So,
Yes.
um, what I want to also ask about, and shifting more into like the substance use and the time frame, I'm wondering, like, was that, like, when did it start, and kind of like when did you decide that you were just like done with it all? But we're gonna go to our quick first sponsored break, and then once we get back, I'll let you share that. I like to, leave a cliffhanger, so
Love it.
we'll be right back after this quick sponsored break.
1,917 people die daily from suicide globally.
I lost my middle sister, Carrie, to a completed suicide on February 20th, 2017.
How does Make Mental Health Matter save lives?
Number 1. Awareness.
My story, all over it, isn't unique. I am a domestic violence survivor. I was in active addiction, and because of Kelli and the work that she does and the opportunity to have my voice heard, I was able to stay clean and sober and have hit a year. I'm still here, and if it wasn't for Kelli answering my call the day that I thought I was going to take my life.
Number 2. Conversation.
I'm curious, and I know that I've heard a lot in the BIPOC community, it is very hush-hush. It's like one of those things that you don't talk about. Like, you literally feel like it's not a conversation you can have. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
First, shout out to Kelli, because I'm glad that she asked the question. I researched you before I went on your show, and I saw how real and authentic you were. And I just appreciate the question, because it is different, and we have to have tough, courageous conversations. So yes, I always say I'm a triple diversity threat. I'm a Black woman with multiple disabilities. Now, I'm not really a threat, but to other people, I may be, because people fear the unknown and what they're uncomfortable with.
Number 3. Education.
Kelli's passionate commitment to mental health awareness is a beautiful thing. It's clear in her social media posts, it's clear in the resources that she puts together, in the activities that she provides, her collaboration with organizations, and the consistent way that she continues to deliver a message, encouraging people to understand that they can share openly and to break the stigma around mental health. Kelli's topics cover children and adults, talk about things that we can do as a community, things that we can do individually, and her website is packed with information and resources and all kinds of contacts that you can use to reach out, whether you're dealing with something yourself or you're looking to help somebody else who is struggling. I encourage you to check it out.
And like that, we're back. If you just are joining the Make Mental Health Matter show, make sure you go back and watch the first part. Vanessa and I are having a wonderful conversation about her story and her journey through childhood trauma experiences into substance abuse, and now in the space of recovery. I left it on a cliffhanger, but I'm curious, and the reason why I asked this question is because for those of us that are parents out there, and just kind of understanding the journey that our children are going on, and how young it can really start, especially substance abuse. I'm curious, like, what was the age range that you remember that everything kind of started, and then how long, other than going into the like jail, I'll just call it jail, and then coming out of that, like, what was the thing that you're like, I'm done, like, I need to fix all the things that are going on?
Oh my gosh, what a question. And I want to start off by saying that the break there, you had me in tears the whole time. Nobody could see it, but I was here crying the whole time. That was so beautiful and powerful, and I'm glad I got to witness that. So, gosh, to answer that question, just like everyone else, all of our stories are unique. Every single one of us is different, completely different brushstroke, right? So for me, mine didn't really start that early. You know, like I said, I bounced around forever. I found that stability in Branson, Missouri. I love that place. But for 3 years. And that's when I finally felt comfortable to make friends, to start building a community. And I started playing sports, played football, and little tiny town, we would have parties. And so it really started like towards the end of my high school. And that was just really to fit in. And, I only started drinking alcohol. I didn't do anything else other than that, just at social gatherings, and I knew that I liked it. I liked it a lot. And every time I was the one that everybody talked about, because there were stories of whatever I did afterwards. So I knew that there was an issue at first, but I started my family right after high school. So I was blessed. I'm honored. And I always talk about it when I share my story about how I have 3 beautiful daughters. And I started my, journey into being a parent when I was 18. So it went right from trying to fit into, oh my gosh, I have to support and I have to be there for somebody. And I have to give them, just like everybody else says, what I didn't have as a child, and I wanted to be able to provide for them. So my active addiction didn't kick in yet. Every now and then the dads would get together, because I was still a dude then. We would get together and we would have we'd go bowling or something. And of course there'd be alcohol involved, and I would always push it to the limit, and I'd always be the one in trouble. And nothing really jumped out because I wanted to be that parental figure that I had never had. And I did everything I possibly could. Didn't finish college at first, didn't do all of this because I wanted to be there for them. So my active addiction didn't really kick in until I was going through my second divorce. And let me rephrase that. The first one happened real fast. It was very mutual. We decided we were too young and we wanted what was best interest for the children. And then I quickly dove into a second marriage, and that marriage was not easy. And there was a lot of trauma that I still work with my therapist today on trauma that I, developed through that relationship. I remember going to the judge in Oklahoma, and whenever I filed and I was explaining the things that happened, and he told me, he was like, "You are a man. You can't be abused by a woman. There's no way that this is possible." And it was shattering. So I was working a second job whenever I was going through that divorce to pay for the attorney fees. And that job was in a bar. And going through a divorce, not feeling love, not feeling connected. And all of a sudden, everybody's giving me attention and people want to be around me because I'm giving out the drinks. I loved it. I loved the attention. And that is when my addiction started. And I knew that it was taking over my life right off the bat. So I went and bought a guitar. I didn't know how to play guitar. And I would sit in front of the computer on this dial-up computer and trying to figure out where to put my fingers, because I knew if I would stay there, I wouldn't be at the bars, because I was leaving with no money and I was not remembering things and doing things that I'm not proud of. So it started right away, and it started fast and hard. And when you're behind the bar getting all this attention, not only is there alcohol that's there, but there's other things that show up as well. And so I, again, wanted to fit in, wanted to feel loved, wanted to know all of this inside. And I also have to say this too, that Vanessa has been there since the beginning. And so dealing with the childhood trauma, Vanessa was there. I was afraid of it, living in a rural community. I couldn't be this beautiful person you see in front of you now. I couldn't in that environment. Couldn't do it on the reservation, couldn't do it out in the general public. And that followed me throughout. So when my active addiction kicked in, initially it was to mask the pain of the divorce and what I was going through. But it quickly turned into, I have to hide this identity, especially being a father. I can't be transgender and be a father. I have to be this role model for them to look up to. I have 3 beautiful daughters that they're all in recovery from their own personal struggles. And I didn't mention substances. Again, they all have their own recovery journey. And a lot of it, they're in recovery from what I put them through. So my active addiction started right away. And when I bought that guitar, I actually got good. And I started playing in bands right off the bat. And guess what? When you're playing in bands and you're playing shows, there's even more substances that come in. And every band that I was in, we gained a little bit more popularity. And as I had mentioned, I've been on a couple different labels. I've moved all over, lived in Round Rock, Texas, just outside of Austin for a while. I thought that was my new identity. When I'm on stage, when I'm behind the bar, people love me. When I'm using the substances that are there, people love me. And I finally felt connected. And the more I used, the less I thought about Vanessa. Even though it was every day, the less I thought about my childhood trauma. It was still there every single day. The less I would worry about the welfare of my children, because I was too focused on me. And then whenever the substance started to run its course, that's when all that self-hatred and self-loathing would come in, that I wasn't there for my children. I wasn't there for myself. I wasn't there for my partners. And my journey led to many, many failed attempts at taking my own life, removing my existence from the planet. And that started at an early age, right in high school, and multiple attempts throughout all this time. And it really coincided with my substance use. The heavier I used it, the more depressed I got, and then it would end up with that, and I'd end up in hospitals. I'd end up going to detoxes and treatments, and that's when I really started to work on my mental health. And I say work loosely. I was ready to think about acknowledging it. I wasn't ready to admit anything yet. I was more leaning towards the fact that I was an alcoholic, even though I would admit that I was doing everything else. So that was early 20s, and that followed me heavier and hard because, again, the bands gained more popularity. I moved to Colorado to get out of a record deal, and then ended up joining other bands and joining, gaining popularity and more substance use and more bartending when we were in town. And so it just went hand in hand. And the older I got and the less active my children were in my life, the more the substance started rearing their ugly heads, the more depression sank in. I tried moving out of Denver a couple times up into the mountains, and my active addiction and my mental health struggles would just crumble and fall apart. And I'd either end up in jail. I did county time. I know this beautiful person you see in front of you has a lot of experience with the cuffs. I actually still carry my prison ID with me every single day, and not as a reminder of where I don't want to go, but as a reminder of that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because that was a time that my children could start their recovery journey. My mom, my family, everyone that I had harmed in my active addiction and my struggles, they were able to feel safe and start their journey. It was also the same time that I felt safe and could start my journey. So that was the best thing that ever happened to me. If it wouldn't have happened, I don't know if we would be sitting here talking right now. Gosh, that's pretty much, to recap in a nutshell, is that once it started, it just continually got worse and worse and worse. And it was all because I was not addressing this beautiful person or the struggles that were attached to hiding her and all of that abandonment issues that I had at an early age. And I was focusing all of my intent on trying to be somebody for someone else instead of being the person for myself.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And I mean, that just gives even more brush strokes, right, of the whole picture. And I love the fact, I mean, not love the fact, but I have heard also from other guests that I've had that going to prison or jail or getting into trouble was like the best thing that happened for them, because then you were able to, not that there's like, again, not that there's a ton of resources, but it's a space that you can finally process whatever's going on. I do know one of my former guests, they had a 20-year sentence in prison and ended up, I think, only with, it was either 7 or 11 years, but still the same statement was that that was the best thing that could have happened to me, especially at that moment, because I would have never gotten clean had that not happened. And I also am just curious. I mean, wonderful that you had this time that you were able to process everything that was going on. Now your kids are having their time to be able to recover, and knowing that at that moment it's like you hit rock bottom, but you can only really go up from there. So I just appreciate that you shared the whole experience, and knowing, I mean, failed attempts, luckily, because you are here, and you're able to share your story with those that may be feeling alone or are in this space that they're not feeling like they fit in anywhere, or they're being bounced around, or substance is the only thing, or knowing that when you start to get wrapped up into those type of communities, right, it just kind of keeps going and going and going and going. But there's got to be somewhere, sometime, that things break or crumble, or however you want to put that. So I want to kind of shift a little bit, and we are going to go to our last quick sponsored break. But talking about Vanessa and how that all plays a factor, and how that transition really happened. So we'll chat about that after this quick sponsored break.
Have you ever felt completely alone?
Like your life doesn't matter.
One person dies due to suicide every 40 seconds.
You are not alone. Call the National Suicide Lifeline at 988.
Hope and recovery is possible.
1 in 8 people globally live with a mental disorder.
That's why empowering minds saves lives.
We need your help.
With only $19 a month, you help us save lives through mental health and suicide prevention education.
Scan the QR code or go to makementalhealthmatter.org to sign up as a warrior for mental health today.
Hello, I'm Dr. Kimberly L. Wilson, also known as Dr. Burnout. You can catch me on Leadership Beyond Burnout on E360 TV on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Vitality Network, where we focus on emerging women leaders and women leaders.
Hi there, I'm Dan Hafner. I'm the host of the show Tech Bites with Dan Hafner. Join me live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on the Achieve TV network for the latest technology and business news and advice. Join me right here on E360 TV.
And like that, we're back again. If you are just joining the Make Mental Health Matter show, I'm not going to do a recap because you need to go back and watch what we've been chatting about. But Vanessa, I was alluding to before the break, really talking about Vanessa and how that all came about. I know you mentioned that she was always there, but with the transitions, all of the things happening, not really feeling like you fit, especially with your father's side of the family. I would only imagine that it was something that you just had to keep shoving down, knowing that you also have 3 beautiful daughters that you wanted to be dad to. And the other factor that you added in was the rural communities. And somebody specifically said to you, you are a man, so you shouldn't be abused by a woman, right? Like, what the heck? Like, all those things coming at you. And now you're like, well, I can't even be who I know I should be. Also going into just talking about transgender in general, because I think that there's just so much misconception with that. And so I've had other guests in the past that are also transgender, and so I just want to open that space up.
Oh my gosh, thank you for that, because yeah, it's definitely been a struggle. And not only did I have the outside pressure of being this image, of being this identity, of the sex that I was born into, I also had found connection with my daughters. They loved me in a way that I have never, ever, ever felt before. It's something I cherish. And so I was afraid that if I was to become my true, authentic self, that I would lose the connection that I had been longing for my whole life. So I just wanted to be what the society was telling me I needed to be for them and still receive their love for me. So again, my journey, circling back around for Vanessa, it started in prison. And I don't want to say it started in prison, because it didn't, because I was living this image of a very masculine man. I was on the weight pile every day. I was working on building the chest. I was working on getting swole, as they say. I ended up joining a wildland firefighting squad while I was in prison. I did 2 seasons of that. I was the squad leader. So I ran all the physical activities. I took them out into the mountains and got to battle wildland fires. So I had this physique of this macho man. I wasn't huge by any means, but I was a man, and that's what I did. But I had seen in prison for the first time that there was people walking around in yellow shirts. They weren't wearing the white shirts like us. And I was like, whoa, she's beautiful. Who is that? What is going on? But I didn't say that outwardly, because I had to uphold this image of this man that was in prison. And so that's when I learned that there was options for people to become their true authentic self inside there and help with the hormones and whatnot. in my past, growing up in the rural community and then driving straight into the rock and roll scene, I knew of drag, but that wasn't for me. That wasn't me, because I always felt that that was somebody pretending to be somebody that they weren't. That was an image that they were putting on. And I knew in my heart since my earliest memories that I was Vanessa. I didn't choose the name Vanessa. Vanessa has always been with me my whole life. And so for me, that was just kind of an act, and that wasn't what I was doing. If I was going to do this, it was legit. And so I learned the possibility of hormones, and you could do this while I was in prison. Never knew that. So during my self-discovery time, and again, a lot of meditation and yoga, which isn't popular in prison, but it allowed me to get rid of the ego and start breaking that down. I was formulating a game plan that I am going to, when I get out, this is what I'm going to do. I got to get the job, I got to get the car, and then I'm going to work on being myself. One, because I've been gone from society for 4 years. Nobody knew me. I thought everybody forgot about me and they'd moved on. And so I was going to have this clean, fresh start, and I could be myself without having that fear of people judging me for changing from my dead name to my current name. And so I got out, got the job, got the car, and then started working in substance treatment. And when I started working in substance treatment, I found something like I belonged, and I didn't have to try. My lived experience, because in my office, I had my prison TV. And again, I carry my prison ID. And so I was blessed to work for this organization to where we were able to accept all rays of Medicaid. So people come straight off the street to the private pay to all commercial. So I was able to connect with people on all different levels. And one thing that really connected with people was that prison thing, people from the jail system, and people would struggle, like, you just don't understand. And I'm like, that's my TV. Let's talk, sit down, stop acting a fool. And so I was able to connect, and it was the first time in my life that I didn't have to try to fit in. I could be myself with all my flaws, with that canvas, with the big holes in it and the burn marks and everything. That was a way for me to connect with people on a level to where they would communicate to me completely different from their therapist. Completely different from, their parole officer or whatnot. They were talking to me on a level that was united, and we felt connected. And so I didn't want to lose that connection. If I became Vanessa right then and there, I was going to lose all of it. And I climbed the corporate ladder in the treatment industry. So I was moving from manager to director roles. And I was afraid that finally in my life, I've got stability. I've got people who love me and care about me. I care and love them, and it's not an act. It's not a substance, driven desire. I truly felt love and connection with everybody that I encountered. And so I was afraid to become Vanessa at that time. And to be honest with you, Vanessa will be turning 1 year old on February 16th. So I haven't even been myself for a year. When I met you at Pride, that was my very first Pride ever, because I had been too afraid to connect and interact in that community. And so when I approached my boss at Advocacy for Recovery, Colorado, and told her that I was struggling with all these mental health struggles, because I had lost my roommate to his addiction. My girlfriend at the time had lost her sister right afterwards. There was a lot of things that kind of built up, and my mental health was struggling. And I knew from experience that if I let that fail and I didn't reach out for help and work through the processes, that depression and anxiety was going to turn right back into substances, and I was not going to be here any longer. Because my segue into DOC was my last failed attempt to take my life. And when I woke up, I didn't hurt myself, kind of, but I learned that I had hurt 2 other individuals. And so for me, that was kind of a pivotal point too, because I had so much hatred for myself, but I never wanted to hurt anyone else. And when I come to and realize that, all the hatred I had towards myself that I was turning inward actually hurt other individuals, that's when I knew that there had to be a drastic change. So again, that prison time, gosh, so many positive things that came out of there, which is weird to say. But I got to a point where the mental health was struggling so much. I reached out to my support group. I set a time frame with my therapist on when Vanessa was going to come to be, spoke to the organization, very supportive, and I came out very small. I bought some pink Chucks and then gradually into some jeans and stuff like that, because I was still terrified. And one thing that I learned right off the bat is that in the recovery community, and I say recovery because that's a whole wide umbrella, everybody has felt so much loss and just wanted to feel loved and connected and have been there through struggles and successes for themselves and other individuals. So whenever I started my journey, it was just kind of like, all right, cool, love you, sweet. And instantly, overnight, Vanessa came to be. And the more I was loving myself, the more it spread into the community and the more opportunities opened up. And as I alluded to earlier, I had never attended Pride. I didn't know what type of resources were needed in the LGBTQ plus community. I didn't know where it was lacking. And since I've become this beautiful individual and I get to speak on all kinds of stages and in different platforms throughout the state, is that I get to express my true authentic self, but now I can also be vocal about the disconnect between those resources and how each one of them are still setting up barriers. Even within the LGBTQ plus community, there's barriers and segregation between each of those letters. And all of those resources need to work together. We need to bring it from, let's just call them the normal community, the cis community, and that community, and work together. And so that's kind of how my passion has changed. I'm blessed that I had 6.5 years of my recovery journey for mental health and substances before I became Vanessa. I feel that if I would have tried this journey sooner, it wouldn't have worked out the way it has now. But I feel so much love and support from my community every single day that I don't try to do anything anymore besides be my true authentic self and to truly love and to truly have compassion for everyone. And I say everyone because I'll throw this little tidbit in there too. Most people don't know about it. Recently, I was the victim of a hate crime. I'm transgender. I'm an outspoken individual. I'm pretty well known in the community, and it put a target on my back. And to be honest with you, this is my first speaking engagement since then. So I'm learning a new process of healing and connection and recovery. And I have another recovery date from that attack and those abuse. And I'm not going to let it take away my voice, because our voice is the most powerful thing that we have. And for us to listen to other people's voices and just allow ourselves to connect on some level, my voice will never go away. And I'm grateful that you gave me the opportunity to let my voice shine again, because it's been tucked away. But now I have more of a passion to bring those resources together for all kinds of survivors, all people in recovery from different areas, because we need to work together as a community. We have to come together. We have to be able to acknowledge that we're all the same, regardless of what we look like, where we came from, or which struggles we're dealing with. So thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's amazing. And I didn't realize that it only has been a year.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when I met you, I was just like, oh my gosh, Vanessa is fabulous. And like, it fit, right? Like there wasn't anything that I would have ever assumed that was not like, that it was new for you, right? And I appreciate you just adding all those layers in there of, you really had to go through the recovery journey. You really had to like do the healing part of all of this to be able to really truly get into the space that you felt comfortable to allow Vanessa to come out. And I truly believe that too, is you have to do that healing. You have to do the work. You can't just like shove it down or push it away, right? Like we have to work through whatever we're going through. And I appreciate you just sharing all of those layers. And I could absolutely listen just for hours, because you are like, your voice is so powerful, and it is so important to know that, one, you're not alone, and your experience, whatever it is very valuable. And you know that it obviously like took some time, right? Like it's not just an overnight, I'm going to change everything, I'm going to be better, and it'll all be great, right? Like it's not just all rainbows and puppy dogs all the time. We have to go through those experiences to really get into the space. And what I found, because recovery is a community that is newer to me also, I have grown up in the LGBTQ plus community my whole life. But on the other side of recovery, that's a newer space for me, that where my nonprofit is delving into. And what I appreciate is hearing the stories, hearing the journeys, knowing that sometimes we hit that rock bottom, and sometimes it's the best thing that can happen to us. But then knowing, especially because when I went to the Advocates for Recovery rally, is I was shocked by just the warm welcome and the appreciation and the people that came up to our booth. And I was just like, wow, like it for me, it all clicks at that moment, right? Also, last year was the very first time that my nonprofit has ever been a part of Pride. And so there was a lot of things that happened last year that my nonprofit and myself have not been a part of. And so both of those communities, right? Like they're just so welcoming, and you don't have to be to belong. And I think that's the coolest part is I am not a person in recovery. I am also not LGBTQ plus IA, right? But I still fit, and I still have my story, and I still know all of these amazing, incredible people that are a part of it. But as you said, like I still have a recovery story, right? Like if I told my whole entire story, which I did one time, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, but we're all in this recovery space. So, I would love, maybe some other time I'm going to start doing in-person shows. So I would love for you to come back and we can just keep opening up the conversation, because I think this is so important. And unfortunately, we're coming towards the end. So I want to allow you the space to share any final last thoughts, and then also where people can follow and find you.
Love it. Thank you. And you let me know when that in-person happens. I'll be there 100%. So to make it quick, I cannot do this. I cannot be my authentic self, and I can't help others unless it involves community, and it takes a community. And that's why I'm passionate and blessed that my title is Director of Community Connections. And that's what I do. I bring it together. So for me, you can find me on the Advocates for Recovery Colorado website. You can find me all over the place. I'm already scheduling events for this year, another Rally for Recovery. It's the third Saturday in September, which is National Recovery Month every year downtown at Civic Center Park. You will find us all there again. Colorado Artists in Recovery. We do tons of amazing things on there, but honestly, there's so many resources in the community, and all you have to do is ask. All you have to do is show up, and more than likely, you're going to see Vanessa at all the events. You're going to see me at all the barbecues. You're going to see me at all the tabling things, because I need that for myself, and I like to show that that is what recovery looks like. We have to recover out loud. We can't let our voices be quietened. We can't let our voices be taken away. And so, if I have a platform to scream my voice, I'm going to be there with sparkles.
Yes, and that is advocatesforrecovery.org/Vanessa. And for those of you that are listening, it's ADVOCATEREcovery.org/VANESSA. And then the other one is, I'm not going to spell this one whole out, but Colorado Artists with an S in recovery.org. And you can go to /meet-the-team-1. So Vanessa, I am just honored that you came and shared your story. And yes, we'll do another one that you come in person to the studio as we start to open those up. But I just really, truly appreciate you. And I am honored to have you on the show and be the first one that you came back and spoke with. So
love it. Thank you so much. This has been an honor, truly.
Yay.
You're beautiful. Keep doing the amazing work.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of the Make Mental Health Matter show. I am just blessed to have amazing people in this community that are doing amazing work. You heard Vanessa. I mean, we have to recover out loud, and recovery it's not just substances. It's not just trauma. It's not just whatever you want to put into that just space. I think that we all are in this space of recovery, and it's part of the journey. It's part of the human experience. And we never know who we're going to come in contact with. And I am just blessed that I was in that space that we were at Pride last year and Vanessa and I met, and being able to dive into the community of recovery, which is a space that I was not familiar with prior. So you never know who you're going to meet, where you're going to meet them. And that's the best part about getting out in community, is being able to share that experience. And again, you don't have to be to belong. And I think that's the coolest part, especially about both of these communities that we're talking about, and more also in the mental health space. You don't have to have a mental health challenge to belong. It's just all education and understanding and being a support for other humans. We're all human. So no matter what you do, make sure your human comes back here next week. We go live every single Monday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on E360 TV, or you can listen on Dream Vision 7 Radio at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. Mountain Time. So no matter what you do, make sure you come back, because I have a ton of amazing guests that are coming up. So I will see you then. Bye, y'all.